Narendra Modi has won a historic landslide victory in the country's general election. It's been more than 5 decades since an Indian prime minister has returned to power with such a large mandate. As one of the world's fastest growing economies, India has long been seen as a major potential market for Canadian exports. Free trade negotiations have been underway in one way or another between the two countries since 2011. So what could Modi's re-election mean for Canada? Stuart Beck served as Canada's High Commissioner to India from 2010 to 2014. He's now the President and CEO at the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada. Shuvaloy Majumdar served as Policy Director to Foreign Affairs Minister John Baird. He's now a Senior Fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. Hello to both of you. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Good to be here.
I want to get into the implications for Canada and the potential for trade between our two countries. But first, let me just get your interpretation of what this victory means. It was largely framed, Mr. Beck, as a referendum on Mr. Modi. What do you think of the sort of decisiveness of his victory?
Well, I just think it's, I guess, reinforces the programs that he's been putting in place in terms of economic development and the focus on building the Indian economy. The growth rates have been very strong, and so I think people are satisfied with what the direction that he's taking with economic matters.
Mr. Majumdar, how do you interpret the results?
Oh, it's an assertion of a rising and confident India. The fact that Narendra Modi has expanded his BJP party presence in the Lok Sabha and the lower house is really quite remarkable. He's easily becoming the most consequential leader of India since independence, eclipsing Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi. It's a very significant moment for the Indian people and a profoundly important message for the world.
What do you think, Mr. Beck, about what it means for Canada, and specifically where trade between our two countries is concerned? There had years ago been talk, and I'm sure you can tell us more than anyone about the potential for a free trade agreement between our two countries, but those talks have very much stalled. I believe the last round was held in 2017. We've seen Mr. Modi pursue some protectionist policies. What do you think this bodes for the future of trade between our two countries?
Well, ironically, we have a poll in the field right now of attitudes of business and thought leaders in 6 Asian countries, India being one of them. We've got results in for 3, India, China, and Singapore. And it's of the 3, India is most welcoming to doing business with Canada. So the potential is there. I still think we have some bridges to cross at the most senior levels in terms of attitudes towards what people perceive as Canadian support for an independence movement in the Punjab, but that is, was part of a prickly situation in the Prime Minister's last visit to India. I think the stage is set. There's lots of good reasons why Canada and India could do a really big leap in the relationship. We have many Indian students coming to Canada now, and we have Indian tourists. There's lots of people-to-people connections. Hopefully we can come to some sort of conclusion on the free trade agreement, but after 11 rounds, I think some people have given up on the idea.
What do you think, Mr. Majumdar? Should a formal free trade agreement still be the goal?
It should be a goal, but I share the former High Commissioner's perspective on skepticism around the free trade negotiation. He'd been single-handedly part of many of those 11 rounds, so I defer to his expertise. However, the Indian opportunity is extremely significant, and it is unfortunate that the politics between the two leaders has come in the way of the bilateral relationship. I sincerely hope that Canada can think bigger than whoever might be in individual power at any given time, or stop flirting with the excesses of one particular community and its rogue elements, and start focusing on the significant opportunity that India provides for Canada across the Indo-Pacific. This is a country in which we have so much symmetry across values, in common language, common political heritage. It's a place where Canada ought to be setting up a flagpole for our wider outreach across the region. And especially in the context of strategic competition with China, India and Japan and other countries afford huge opportunities for Canadian engagement, which should be pursued as robustly as possible.
Mr. Beck, it's not just Canada where free trade talks have stalled with India. The EU as well has seen the same thing happen. So, based on your experience, what are some of the sort of things, the cleavages that keep us apart?
Well, you made the point that it's not an easy agreement to negotiate with the Indians. They're always concerned about what the impact would be on their broader economy by having a free trade agreement with one country or one region. So that's always part of that conversation. When I was in India, the EU came very close to having an agreement, and it was autos that upset the apple cart at that point in time. For us, our concern is about labor mobility. The Indians would like a Mode 4 arrangement, which is, not to be too specific, but a labor mobility arrangement which is more sympathetic to their economic advantages. Of course, we'd like to see some changes in the tariff structure and behind the border measures that they put in place. So, I mean, it's always comes down to a few issues. At some point, I think the will be there, and it's just a question of pushing things over the line. We've had lots of conversations, so we know what the issues are, and it's just coming to some sort of conclusion.
What sectors of the Canadian economy or Canadian exports, Mr. Majumdar, do you think stand to benefit most should something be worked out?
Well, from financial services to agriculture to food security and ensuring that Indians' food supply is stored in safe facilities, to water security. I mean, it's such a multidimensional economic relationship, including an infrastructure, that Canada can be a significant part of across the value chain of the Indian economy. There's just an extraordinary moment, though, for Narendra Modi to take his majority and tackle some of the deep stresses on the Indian economy, particularly Indian socialism in its agriculture and energy sectors. They're third rails and fourth rails of Indian politics, but have to be addressed in order for the country's prosperity to be unlocked, as well as ensuring that the non-aligned kind of history that India has been emerging from results in new alignments for India's economic interests, which I think primarily are in the West, of which Canada can be a major facilitator.
If the stage is set, I think that's the term that you use, Mr. Beck, what needs to happen in the federal government here in the next 5 months that this one's in place, and then whatever happens in the fall election, what would your advice be to them in trying to pursue a bigger relationship?
Well, I think first and foremost, you have to have a strategy. We talk about that at the foundation, about having an Asia strategy in general, and then you can break it down to different countries. And India is one of those countries which is so large and so big, as Shub has described, that there are different areas that we can succeed, whether or not the politics at the very top are conducive to that type of arrangement. So you take a look at areas where we have tremendous strengths, and one of the things that we were putting in place, and she was aware of this, is what we're doing in the innovation space has tremendous application in India, and how do we build those bridges into those particular areas? So artificial intelligence, India sits on huge amounts of data, which is important for the types of activities we can do to work on predictive agriculture or healthcare or other areas that have tremendous opportunity. Clean technology is one area that, again, Canada can bring some really interesting solutions to the problems that India is facing right now. And this is kind of a new age, a new era, a new type of trading arrangement. And again, we just need to focus on that and be strategic about how we approach it. I think we put to bed some of the issues that we've had in the past. We have some issues we still have to deal with. And that, I think, the government has to think about and how they want to approach that.
Okay, I'll leave it there, but I want to thank both of you for your insight this evening. Thanks so much to Stuart Beck, former Canadian High Commissioner to India, and Shivaloy Majumdar, former Policy Director to former Foreign Affairs Minister John Baird. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.